Oh, I little thought that when you spoke of safety and a place where I would be looked after, that your visions could be so far from mine. Were you surprised, on ringing for the force, that so many would come to cramp me in this dance with danger? Did the vision of these handcuffs look tight behind my back, or the raw restraints around my bleeding ankles shock you too? Or did the mark of that great black jackboot stamped across my purple, used, abused body bear the rubber stamp of your approval? Mark me, I did not feel so safe.
Well, to me personally, I've been working on Art of Difference now for almost 18 months. So these 3 days are kind of this huge culmination of a lot of work, and it's, I've kind of seen the whole conference and arts program totally change from a festival to what we have now, which was much more locally based and is now got these fantastic international performers coming out and people flying from all over the country and all over the world to come to it. I mean, to me, I think disability is is something that affects personal identity and it affects point of view, and that's then going to affect the artwork in its structure and form and content and process. So it's actually about in the same way that gender and race and sexuality affects artwork and the way that we receive it. I think disability functions in the same way.
It's probably the first time in Australia that we have a mixture of workshops, performances, exploring how people with disabilities can be part of the mainstream arts and entertainment industry.
I think a lot of times that some of the artistic practice that happens with people with disabilities isn't cutting edge, and I think we need to explore why that happens, why it isn't cutting edge.
And how they sustain their practice, and that's quite difficult because, as we know, the art's competitive. And then for people with a disability, well, it's going to be just more competitive. And we need people with disabilities content of their work in the general cultural mix of society, and it's important that we see it. But we won't see it unless we can sustain their practice.
I just think it's a great thing, showing that people with disabilities can contribute to the artistic side of Melbourne and Australia.
Pop to as in Babylon's as in nothing left to do. Colors in my head reflect the faces of the dead. Spirits that have never seen the dark of night go by. Like a knife that cuts sky.
Always comes, performance, entertainment, even laughter always comes from dealing with the particularity of each person's own experience, the transcending, the working through the difficulty, and from that particular perspective, something is created which unites us all.
Disability is in all of us, sure. But we create the peculiar town planning, the architectural arrangements that mean that we actually leave people out. So when I hear you talk about people with disability, you're still focusing on the individual as if that individual with whatever their condition or impairment is the focus of the problem. Slinging in with a disability. Bollocks.
Art is where we can be as complex as the mornings and the nights find us. And then we need our uniform political front. But uniformity without the artist will be just another kind of desert.
I think for disabled people and disabled disability arts, we are really at a very tender age, probably a prepubescent stage.
It's just weird how things happen. A couple of days ago I was walking down Carlisle Street, Balaclava, and this Orthodox Jewish guy came up to me and said, "Are you one of us?" And I smiled at him. I said, "What, are you fucked up too?"
I was born 2 days after Decimal County was introduced, but I kept my value.
But we hope that the combination of light and heat will illuminate and energise your paths. It certainly will ours. Thank you for coming. Welcome. Have a great 3 days.
When I find there's nothing I can do but swim around with you, but swim around with you, but swim around with you.
I need to start by just identifying myself as a disabled artist and not an artist with a disability. I hate to get semantic on you, but if we look at the social model of disability, that says that people are disabled by society and not by the impairments, then I find it very difficult to say that I am an artist with a disability, because the disability sits in society and not with me.
Disabled is about disabling somebody, disempowering, disenfranchising.
That's right.
I'm not proud that somebody takes away my capacity to create. I'm not proud that somebody denies me a voice. I'm not proud that somebody disenfranchises me. But we've reclaimed the word, just like queer politics.
Yeah.
Queer, reclaimed. So I wouldn't be an artist with homophobia, would I? But I might be a queer artist. And I wouldn't be necessarily an artist with anti-Irish racism. But I am an Irish artist. Do you see what I'm saying? Yep. And so we've reclaimed the word disability and we're going, okay, you've disabled us. Watch this space. We'll run you over next.
I don't think that's the point. I think the point is come and see this fantastic comedian, come and see this talented artist. And that's, I spend a lot of time working around marketing things without mentioning disability at all. But like I said, not actually not disclosing it. Like I said, if you're enlightened, you'll realise there's going to be artists with disability in it. But if you're some dumb general public who, you know, only reads face value, then you're not going to know until you get there and go, oh, I had no idea that comedian was going to have cerebral palsy. Like, does it matter? As long as they're funny.
If we don't, though, come out as, you know, disabled artists or whatever, then we may not be challenging those conceptions as much. And so I do try to bring it in a way that it can be challenged, but not as the headline, not so a person's reactions come in straight away, but to build up to you know, the whole diversity and richness of your art rather than having it as the headline.
Until we desensitise the public to the word disabled, we are always going to have a problem with that word. And so I use it on purpose so that people get used to seeing the word and associating, you know, in my case, me with that word and associating quality art and performance with the word disabled.
Philip Shaw, of course, like, he is labelling himself, he is identifying and he's marketing himself as a gay disabled vegetarian, and in those cases I would not preclude that in my marketing, because of course that's who he is and that's who he wants to identify himself.
I'm more than.
No, well, I know that, but like if you're, but for instance, if Ray Charles, or well, he's not going to anymore, but if Stevie Wonder turned up for a big concert, you're not going to say, come and see the fantastic blind singer. You're going to say, come and see Stevie Wonder. Everyone knows Stevie Wonder is blind. Everyone knows he is fantastic, but his identity isn't, you know, as the blind, you know, composer. His identity is Stevie Wonder.
We as disabled artists and disabled people need to be very, very clear that disabled and unable are two very different words, and they don't mean the same thing.
The D word that you speak of, I think, should be an A word. They're people with ability, and probably more ability than what they call the normal person, which I don't think we really know what is normal and what is not.
Through the arts, I have been enabled, and I don't feel like a disabled person, a disabled artist, even though I am blind and bipolar and proud.
So people are really confused, and it's like, are you a person with a disability? You are a survivor of the health system. Are you a disabled person? Am I a dwarf? Am I what? Am I what? And years ago I stood here at Art of Difference and said I am different things in different places.
I have the notes here, yes. A jolly old sow once lived in a sty, and 3 little piggies had she, and she waddled about crying oomph, 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 while the little ones cried wee wee. My dear little brothers, cried one of the brats, my dear little brothers, cried he, let us all, for the future, say oomph, 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 for 'tis childish to cry wee wee. Then these little piggies grew skinny and lean they might very well be, for somehow they couldn't say oomph, 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 and they wouldn't say wee wee. So after a while, these little pigs died. They all died of fellow DC. For trying too hard to say oomph, 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 when they should have been saying wee wee. Do you get the picture?
I don't even know whose clothes I'm wearing. They don't even fit. Don't you cry.
And that's another problem, because I was sitting over there, I've gone to sit here because I felt like I wanted to and I needed to. Then I couldn't sit there because it was occupational health and safety. So then I sat on the floor because I wanted to. Couldn't sit on the floor because then I was told I had to sit over there. Then I've wandered over to here, and now people are telling me other stuff. So what I'm making a statement is, if you want to change and talk about a word or a letter, talk about fear. You want to know fear? I know fear. Why do I know fear? I've been caged. You want to talk about being an animal or talking about human? You want to talk about where we really come from? I'm it. I want to survive. I've got life in me. Right? I've been caged, treated like an animal. If you've got bipolar, try the solitary confinement. Try the lock-up, forced medication involuntarily. Then we start talking in reality. You want to, let's all go naked. People here are blind, we can't see. Anyone naked here? What about the naked people? Where do they want to come? No, we can't do that because we've got TV.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm just raising issues.
And I think the second last speaker, I think, is a really good indication of what does happen to people with disabilities. And I think that is something that this conference does need to address, about how, as people with disabilities, we need to make ourselves as comfortable as possible in the spaces, and sometimes that may or may not conflict with people's definitions of occupational health and safety. Now, I think that when things happen like that, what happens is that people actually aren't allowed to actually enjoy spaces, and so the actual anger starts coming out and starts getting expressed. And I think that that's something that we've always got to be conscious of, that gets reflected in our art, in our practice, in our participation, because we are constantly, there's probably not a moment in our lives that actually goes past where we're actually continuously reminded in very negative ways of our disability. And so when that happens and our anger starts actually coming out, there has to be an understanding of where that's actually come from.
Where are
huckleberry friend, Moon River, and
touch my scar, knead my belly. Don't be afraid of my cancer. Enter me the old way, not through the skin cut open, but because I am calling to you through the movement of my hips, the breath that pleads through your hand to touch the want of me. Heal me because you do not fear me. Touch me because you do not fear the future. Cancer and sex, one I have and one I must have.
Well, I said, hey, 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 what do you know? I'm gonna cross that empty ocean to the other shore. The night's going darker, the moon's almost gone. The world is asleep, I see all that's going on. I travel and travel, don't dare look back.
I don't like the D word personally. I don't like to identify as somebody with a disability.
I stare straight ahead and sail forever on. I know by the dawn.
Many people in the deaf community don't like to identify as a disability group.
I said, now, hey, 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 what do you see?
I think it's very important that awareness is raised between the different communities, the hearing and deaf communities.
Well, I said, hey, 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 what do you know? I'm gonna cross that empty ocean to the other shore.
I remember when I found myself in a wheelchair 20 years ago, or not quite 20 years, there was a deep sense of anger that actually drove my motivation. And over time, I began to, that motivation, that need to succeed and to actually prove things, changed more to a sense of trusting in a process, an internal one, where I can know that I can take the time, even if a work that I've got to get done doesn't come straight away. Over time, it'll find its way into place.
Dance performing has always been a source of fascination and enrichment, but of course, trying to function as an independent artist has its frustrations, whether you have a disability or you don't have a disability. Expending a lot of energy, as you need to, on other things like admin, organisation, finding funding, writing up funding applications, all that kind of thing. So that's a source of frustration.
The limitations on work are sometimes limitations that are imposed from outside. And in a sense, people will look at you and say, can this person really do the job? They're disabled. And I think that question comes in. So that, and I don't want to, it's just something that is there sometimes. But as again, you know, like I said, I keep talking about being privileged in some way. You know, I guess I set up in early days to actually find the people who would actually trust me and I would trust them.
With a disability, I just have to sit back and say, well, some things I just can't change, and this is the way it's going to be. So while I see myself as mainstream and my ability comes far further forward than my disability, it's always going to make a difference.
Janelle, you probably have to change your repertoire. You keep singing I Can See Clearly now and on a clear day you can see forever. It's really interesting. I'm a kind of, I fell into disability or crashed into it. So I'm always surprised that when I'm talking to or working with people that suddenly I realise they don't think they're talking to a peer, but they're talking to a person with a disability. So my practice has never really been about my disability, although I've done some highly politicised work about access or space, the space that we can work in. I do installation work. I started out as a painter. I enjoy my painting, but I can't do large-scale megalomania works unless they're in modules now. So it's, so I've gone into real megalomania, which is installation. But really, my art practice is really about arts, philosophy, social questions, and not particular about disability. But I made a pact very early with myself that I would never show in a gallery that wasn't accessible.
The tension cuts both ways about whether you use disability issues in your work as a sort of a platform to explore that, or whether you try and make yourself look kind of flexible and mainstream and able to comment on other issues. And I think it's a real interesting paradox, I guess, that there's always this pressure about, do I just do disabled stuff, or do I show myself to have a wider repertoire? And then, do I have a duty as a disabled performer to comment on political issues?
It's my choice to try and act like I don't have a disability. And I have to respect both of those points of view, regardless of what I personally think. And I think, so then I'm booking people for particular jobs because of what's required of them. So if someone wants a statement about disability, then that's the person I'm booking, someone who makes a statement. I don't book the person who is trying to say, I don't want to associate myself in that way. I want to just be seen as an able artist.
There is the limitation to the possibilities of employment, unless you're incredibly creative, in lots of different ways. And I think the limitations sometimes a person with a disability is competing in a very, very hard game. And that's really, and I think because we're running down, because we're in a time of economic rationalism and very poor, I don't think our Prime Minister has ever been to an arts do anywhere. It says a lot about where we are right now.
The fool, this community artist, is cunningly seduced by a gifted elemental siren. Confused, the fool seeks advice from his pupil. Pupil suggests the fool writes a love letter to the community. The fool writes his love letter. Gifts, like ideas in the world marketplace, are simply cold units of exchange written on balance sheets.
While the work appears quite clean and kind of clinical, very minimalist, it's actually each of those parts of the quartet are intensely meaningful to me. It represents a quite charged emotional response to where I've been and what I've done.
I guess Ross's not only dream but philosophy is that to make any exhibition that he does as accessible as possible. So I suppose having the words up on the wall and then having me speaking, having them in Braille. I'm not sure whether we can smell them, can we, Ross?
No, not this time.
not this time.
But I did do a work in Bundaberg made of toffee.
Made of toffee.
Out of molasses, which was just stunningly smelling.
So we really were, I guess, not only having the words to share, but challenging people in other ways and exploring those senses. So it was really an exciting project to work with Ross, and I've worked with him for a couple of years now on things, and enjoy every minute of it. It's certainly great to be here at the launch.
Learns much more in the hospital outpatient unit and the local park of the values of the community. Learns that smell is a powerful evoker of memory.
My experience of disability makes me aware that there is an audience and a whole lot of collaborators, other creative people who may or may not be disabled, that I can work with, play with, and just enjoy a creative life with.
I think we are the only civil rights movement ever that has been so dependent on asking the oppressor group to advocate on behalf of us to the oppressor group. And, I guess I think of the Indigenous movement, the gay movement, the women's movement, all the other civil rights movements, and it hasn't been about going to men and white people and straight people and saying, can you please advocate on our behalf for us? It's been about solidarity.
People with intellectual disability, which is the community that I work with. I'm not a person with a disability. The people that I work with really require a hell of a lot of support to get out there and do stuff and to be artistically expressive and to learn skills. And I just don't know that we're addressing that.
But as a physically disabled person, I've often wanted to work with intellectually disabled people on this. There's no reason why physically disabled people can't collaborate and partner with intellectually disabled people.
Yes, Philip, but there's
I get told all the time that I don't know what it's like to be intellectually disabled, but somehow non-disabled people know more about
that's
what
just
it's
crazy.
like
I mean,
than I do.
But that's just crazy. That's
I
really
get
crazy.
that
But
all the
I think
time.
there's a shitload of people with disabilities, and there's not that many people with disabilities who are trained up to be able to work with people, other people with disabilities.
We can't simply say, yes, we're a kind of an all-in-one disabilities movement. I think that's very difficult. We'll go into that discussion later. It's just my point of view at this point in time. People with intellectual disabilities, you can just look at the Paralympic movement now. There's a huge move to actually shove them out of the Paralympics. So we have to be very careful about treating particular groups of people as oppressors. And I think, as I said to the person up there before, there are people who do stand up from all walks of life, all abilities, and actually a part of the the recognition of us first as artists, as people, and then and we experience a disability.
As a blonde-haired white woman, I would not be running a black theatre company. Yeah? You've got it. Brilliant. So some people who got distressed when I said the other day, if you are non-disabled and you are the artistic director of your company, I'd like you to think about the day where you look forward to letting that power go. Yeah? To actually ensuring that disabled people are running that company. And that means you build bridges, you create allies, you become an ally actually, you create apprenticeships, internships, you make sure that there's concession training, professional development for disabled people who haven't had access to the employment opportunities you've got, the training opportunities you've got. Thank you. Well, that was 4 of you. I'm assuming the rest of you have still got to work on,
Rhea comes into the space and places herself. That is the cue for everyone to start They're chattering, yeah?
What marks out these models is that their democratic nature. So generally, even the able-bodied members of the group are members of the group. So it's not as if it's a top-down approach to the forum. So it's much more democratic in that sense. Although the companies themselves have been going for a few years, we've only started at the beginning of the week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and today's Thursday. And we've generally been coming together and creating generally a movement-based art form, which you could call dance, to give it a label.
Yep.
But sometimes we like to break out of that and talk and what have you, so we don't want to get too caught up with calling it dance. But it's a movement.
A movement of the minds and the bodies.
Yeah, we'd like to think so.
I was not sure whether to come today, I've got to say, after yesterday, because I sort of felt like, well, I don't have a disability and I've been feeling oppressed. And I came along thinking, no, it's really important for me to come along and say that. I work for Arts Access and I'm an artist and I work with people with disabilities, and I don't think I should feel ashamed for not having a disability and being able to help people with disabilities express their artwork. And the other thing is, what I love about the disability arts sector is the joy. And I think we need to talk more about the joy. There hasn't been a lot of talk about joy. And also, what needs to happen is we need to see more art and we need to hear less talk. What was fantastic about Julie yesterday was her performance. And that's what I love to see. And what she said in that performance was much more powerful for me than any of the other things she's been saying. And there was joy and sadness in that. And I think what we need to embrace is the diversity of disability arts. If it wasn't for diversity, none of us would be here. And it's the joy of diversity, not the sadness, we need to embrace.
I just want to say to the woman who said that I think it's really good that you're feeling oppressed. Enjoy it. You know, like, it's an experience. And as an artist, I hope that you can use this experience to inform your work in the same way that we do.
Now, whether a person wishes to take on a particular identity, which is always a shifting kind of signifier, that is of no significance to me. I do disagree with making people feel uncomfortable about who they are or feeling oppressed. If we play the game of oppressor, oppressed, victim, non-victim, whatever, we play that game, that binary kind of silly game, all we do is end up in a ghetto.
We choose to feel oppressed or not.
So I just don't agree with that. Anyone that I see or talk to, I see as a potential collaborator, friend, a person who I can work with. It doesn't matter who.
So is it Joe from Arts Access? Just wanted to say that you're not alone in having felt uncomfortable. In fact, I felt uncomfortable yesterday as well, and I have a disability, as you know, because I don't identify as a disabled artist. I identify as an artist who happens to have a disability, so I also felt a level of discomfort as well. And I wanted to say that I think it's not about whether you have a disability and are working with people with disabilities. It's about whether we have a common understanding. That's the important element. And I do think, as I said yesterday, that people with disabilities do need to be employed in arts organisations, disability arts organisations, in positions of decision making. But I also think there is an important place for us to work together in collaboration with people with and without disabilities, gays, vegetarians, and anybody else who wants to come along. And I think that's the important element, but that we have to have a common understanding that people with a disability are just as able to create art and to create excitement as people without disabilities, and that we are all of equal value.
I think disabled people are incredibly tolerant and incredibly welcoming of non-disabled people, and we actually don't get thanked for that very often. In fact, it's something that's expected of us, and we get hassled if we question that.
You know, why isn't there a network of artists with disabilities? And I say, well, yeah, do it. Why isn't there, you know? Get together and just do it. There is actually nothing stopping that happening.
Yep. If we, within these organisations, are not willing to employ staff, professional artists and administrative staff with disabilities in the first instance, then why the hell would anybody outside bother?
Love me, hold me, set me free.
We're here at the moment, about 2 hours away from a showing. We've been spending all week, the last 5 days, working towards a showing. Now we're going to have an audience in here, checking out what we've been doing.
And forevermore, you will have my heart.
It's been such a unique experience, such a beautiful experience, but it's been quite short too, like it's 5 days. So even in terms of what they've achieved in 5 days, knowing that no one knew each other before this event started, it'd be great to really get everyone's feedback so that we can go, right, what are we going to do next?
Yeah, my name is Lewis Tillett, and who am I? Just another person who plays a bit of music.
And what does it mean to be here?
It's extremely important because myself, being a sufferer of mental illness, schizophrenia, yeah, hell and back, and part of the great thing about being here is that I've come back from hell.
I can see, but it's me that must really change.
Yeah, it is an ongoing battle, but it's become now not so much a battle, rather just a daily challenge. It requires continuous me monitoring my thoughts, my moods, my activities during the day, all that sort of thing. There is, in inverted commas, the music business, which has got to be one of the most soul-destroying, heartless, thankless, miserable things you could ever do. On the other hand, at the core of that is the music. The things that I try and touch on, and the space that I try and go into with my music, is not unique to people with a mental illness. It is completely across the board. I mean, it is such a complicated thing, but a mental illness is only when it gets to the point where it impairs one's functionality in the so-called real world and becomes a particular challenge. But again, I try and look at the feelings, the moods, the emotions, the thoughts. I try and concentrate on ones that are universal and not distortions through the mental illness.
Take my hand, we can make a brand new start, and forevermore, you will have my heart. It's my only hope that I can clearly see. Love me, hold me, set me free. See, but it's me that must really change. I don't know why I found this so sincerely strange. But until then, I'll have to wait and see. Love me, hold me, set me free. Oh, let me be.
Thank you.
things that I think is important to keep in mind, regardless of where an artist feels that they are on the food chain of things, is that there's a whole other dynamic that's happening out in the world, which has to do with people becoming disabled because they've been increasingly prevented from reminding themselves to be curious. How can I say this? This doesn't have, whether you're in a wheelchair or not, whether you're blind, whether you're black, whether you're gay, I mean, the list goes on and on. There's an increased kind of situation out there where artists are basically saying, how I can enable you is if you can come curiously and open to this place. We know how to come closed to anything and say, well, if it's good enough, I'll show up, which is much different than an artist who's asking you to take a journey. So I feel like one of the great things is that artists are reminding people and giving them practice in a very mediated society now at becoming connected to their own sense of curiosity. So there's a disruption of being complacent, it doesn't apply to me, et cetera, to remind people that having an adventure, moving towards something, I mean, art can't really, it's not like you're going to lose your life because you've had an abstract theater experience. You know what I'm saying?
So when I say I'm a disabled woman, I've reclaimed the word. Disabled with a capital D. We have a culture and a pride, and this is about identity politics, I know. And I've been banging on about it for days, so that I'm sure some of you are thinking, shut the fuck up, will you? But I'm still going to say it, because I'm aware there's a very young movement, and fires have been lit in the bellies of people in this audience this week, and I am just thrilled to have had a chance to witness that, and to be walking alongside you, actually. I know there's a movement here, and I know it's burgeoning, and it's going to grow.
We've been having some lively discussion about language. You know, are we disabled people? Are we people with disabilities? Are we people with mixed abilities? Are we people with confusion about language? Scope, apparently, I've been confused, but I saw a Scope ad, and Scope made it all clear for me, because Scope says disability is possibility, and so we're not any of those, we're people with possibility. Or maybe we're just possible people. Or maybe we're just possibly people.
Life is like a stage. You are thrust into the spotlight, given a few lines and a prop, and expected to make something happen. Some of us spin magic out of the simple scenarios of our lives, while others get stuck by stage fright and fluff our lines. The important thing is to make the most of the script that you've been given. I think you have been fabulous, really fabulous. Want to try that? Again? One more time? Oh, thank you. When a girl first meets a man, and they always go back to their girlfriend to dish out the info on their hot new guy. Well, when we deathbed get together, what do you think we ask? Is he rich? No. Is he handsome? No. Is he a good kisser? No. Or even, what's his lunchbox like? No. Well, the crucial question we ask is, can you liberate him? If you can't liberate him, then forget it. You know, when you're schmoozing with a human guy, and you're just about to kiss, when all of a sudden he starts speaking something into your ear, and you have to pull back to refocus. But you still keep coming in talking, until you finally have to push him back just to understand what he's saying. And it's not easy liberating in the dark either.